20 years ago, the port of Berbera in the Horn of Africa country of Somaliland told the story of a country at the bottom of a deep hole, ravaged by war and crimped in the pincers of the Cold War.
Today, Berbera is the site of a stunning transformation. With nearly $500 million of investment from DP World, it is transforming the port into a hub for East Africa. It's doing that because of private sector-led growth. It's doing that in spite of having no resources and being a very poor country. It's doing that because it's essentially embraced the private sector and the technology that it offers.
Berbera services have improved fourfold in the last 5 years to 30 bird moves per hour and aimed at 100 in the next 4 years, to place it alongside Djibouti and Mombasa as the continent's most efficient ports. Already, Berbera ranks 184th on the World Bank's port efficiency rankings. This is key to an objective to turn Berbera into the port of preference, not just for import-hungry Ethiopia, the 120 million person, 1 million container market on its border, but as a transshipment hub for the region and into the Gulf of Eden. The Dubai investment in the harbour is complemented by a $90 million aid project led by the United Kingdom and the United Arab Emirates to rehabilitate the 270 kilometers from Berbera to Wajale, near the Ethiopian border town of Jijjiga.
The chaos that you see here at the border of Wajale between Somaliland and Ethiopia is about to change. Shortly, the road behind me, the 16.4 kilometers, is about to be opened. And then beyond that, another 54 kilometers onto the capital of Somaliland and Hargeisa. The 200 kilometers from Hargeisa to the port of Berbera, connecting the hinterland of the Horn of Africa to the coast and to major global trading routes, has already been reconditioned and opened.
Investing in infrastructure is key to economic growth and transformation, but that is only part of the story. Somaliland's story is one of a people determined to build their own country from the bottom up, despite weak commitment from the international community. Its history shapes it profoundly. 30 years ago, Somaliland's elders met in Burao and Boroma to negotiate a peace agreement and rebuild Somaliland following a decade of ruinous war with the Mohammed Siad Barre regime in Mogadishu. Somaliland's peace has endured since 1991. Since then, the Somalilanders have stuck with the winning formula, despite the absence of international recognition and the tepid democratic enthusiasm of much of the rest of the Horn of Africa. To imagine Somaliland's predicament due to non-recognition, think of it as a country under the world's toughest sanctions regime. Its borders are not recognized, nor are its passports. Its currency is not convertible. Its banking system is hampered by the absence of a SWIFT code. Its telephony by the lack of an international dialing code. Investors are deterred by fear of lack of diplomatic protection. In spite of all this, Somaliland is one of Africa's secret successes. The state is powered by a fervent commitment to peace and improved standards of living for its population, facilitated by internally generated funds and financial backing of its population and extensive diaspora. In 2022, the Brentes Foundation brought together a group of academics, political leaders, analysts, and civil society actors in Hargeisa, the capital of Somaliland, under the theme Building Peace and States in the Horn of Africa. A key question discussed is how African countries can manage relations with outsiders and how outsiders can better help African countries. The experience of aid elsewhere in Africa has been underwhelming. Over the past 30 years, donors have poured $1.2 trillion of development assistance into Africa, a figure that could conceivably be doubled if it included unofficial charitable giving. Instead of booming, Africa has become the site of the majority of the world's poor, where 1 in 3 Africans, some 420 million, live below the global poverty line. African countries, in essence, have very little to show for this money. This paltry record is one which Bobi Wine, Uganda's popular opposition leader, finds a colossal failure.
The international community has failed to hold accountable those countries where it sends the aid, to hold them to account to the values, which values are clearly the factors that will make that aid useful to the people. Values like democracy, like the rule of law and respect for human rights. Without a doubt, the international community has preferred stability over democracy, and that has not worked, and it will certainly not work, because the answer is democracy. When aid goes to democracies, democracy thrives. When aid goes to dictatorships, dictators thrive.
John Steenhuisen, leader of South Africa's main opposition party, has this to say about the role of outsiders in development.
Stop backing the people who are the antithesis of those very values and principles. Far too often, external actors want to default to a stabilization or some form of relationship between governments and themselves. And it comes at the expense of real democracy. Seek out in those countries the people who are actually fighting for the values which you say you want to achieve on the continent, and back them.
The African Union has had challenges in addressing Africa's crisis of democracy and problematic regimes. Tendai Biti, a former Minister of Finance from Zimbabwe, has this to say about it.
It's simple. A mosquito can never cure malaria. So most of the actors in the AU are themselves authors of authoritarianism and dictators in their own countries, in their own domestic jurisdictions. So to expect the same authoritarian tin pots to then enforce democracy or democratic deficit or failure in various different African countries, it won't happen, and it can't happen.
The lesson of outsiders in Somalia is one of constantly rewarding failure, and in Somaliland of ignoring success. This is exactly the opposite to what donors and the international community should be doing.
Based on the track record of external interventions in Somalia, the most important value that foreigners can bring to a situation is humility. So recognize that you don't have the answers, recognize that you don't bring the solutions, and in fact, adhere to the principle of do no harm. And if you can identify those that are making progress, then try to support them. But that doesn't mean picking sides in a conflict or trying to tip the scales one way or the other. It means trying to support those who are working for peace. I think that builds on Somaliland's experience, where Somalilanders made peace on their own terms, without external support. But here, the lesson is more of a negative one. It's that having built peace, having built a democratic system, having reconstructed a country from ashes to a functioning 21st century state, there is no sign of appreciation or engagement on the part of the international community.
It has been said about peace building in neighboring Somalia that it is like a piece of paper dangled on a fish hook in a pool of donors hoping that someone would bite on it. In this way, peace building is an exercise in rent-seeking by opportunistic local actors. External support in African conflicts can be made a straightforward cynical calculation according to narrow donor interest, whether these be about alliance building, stability, or helping one group or another to stay in power. There is therefore an imperative for local ownership and a plan that outsiders can support with resources. The process of peace, like development, is defined by the ability to work together. Any successful strategy has to recognize limits the role of outsiders, along with the role they must play in changing the local incentive structures. Somaliland's success has been founded on a healthy combination of principle and pragmatism, unlike the process in neighboring Somalia, one driven organically from the bottom up rather than by international sponsors. The lessons from Somaliland are widely transferable to an African context. Current President Muse Bihi Abdi reflects on the role and importance of peace in building states.
Peace is the foundation upon which state building and economic development are anchored. Homegrown peace and national reconciliation at the grassroots level is more sustainable than internationally driven imposing peace.
Somaliland shows that peace cannot be built by outsiders, no matter their good intentions. As a general rule, outsiders need to aim to do no harm and aim to provide a conducive environment in which local actors can operate. Recognizing Somaliland, for one, would reinforce its remarkable and lonely success in a troubled region and would be an investment in African stability. Failure to do so and to continue to invest more in troubled, unstable countries in its region is a bet on the wrong side of history.